Hello and welcome to the TAP tutorial on TAP administration and permissions. In this tutorial, we will discuss how to set up new users, how to set up departments and roles, how to change a TAP site's theme, and how to navigate between administration level permissions and workflow level permissions. Let's begin. The administration tab is where your site setup happens. It's where we create or edit user information, and where we assign users to departments and roles. It's also where we determine what permissions different departments and roles are privy to. We also configure our e-signature and Salesforce keys in the Administration tab, although we will not be configuring those in this tutorial. The Administration tab is where we can change the look and feel of the site as a whole. First, let's look at the User Management section. Here, we can edit a user's information or add a new user. I'll add a new user. To do so, I simply click on the green button at the top of the page that says New User. After selecting the button, I can add relevant information for the new user. I'll write the user's name, login, and give them a password. Then, I will assign my user to a specific role and a certain department. The options available to me are dependent on the roles and departments I have previously created. After we discuss the user details, we will look closely at how to configure such roles and departments. For now, I'll give this user the role of an HR manager within the HR department. I'll also give them access to the appropriate e-signature key, if that's an option for me. Notice that we also have the option to assign a user to generic fields, but that there are not any options here yet. We will create a new field together. First, though, we'll save here. We might want to add new generic fields to our user details. A generic field has been customized for a particular company or client. For example, a company may wish to associate each of their TAP users with a corresponding employee ID, or supply the name of that employee's manager. All of this information that we supply in our user details will be available to us when we want to populate a dropdown with user data, or when we want to pre-populate text fields with user data. To create a generic field, simply select the Field Definitions tab on the right-hand side and select New Fields. We will supply a code and a label, and the label will be what appears in the form. Let's add a form field for the employee's date of birth. Now, when we save and return to our new user, we can add her date of birth in the generic fields. If we want to add a new department, we can do so by selecting the left-hand tab labeled Departments and clicking the green button that displays Create New. We can easily add users to this department, and we will also now have this department available to us when we create or edit our users. Departments may contain different roles, and that one role may be found across multiple departments. To add a new role, we move down into the Permission section. If we select Application Visibility, we can then create a new role by selecting the green button. We can name it New Role and give it a rank of 0. Most roles will have a role rank of 0. When you are assigned a role rank that is greater than 0, that role will be enabled to co-opt and complete, or edit the request for workflows of which the current assignee has a role rank lower than one's own. So if I have a role rank of 3, and I am looking at a workflow with a role rank where the current assignee has a role rank of 1, I can edit that request, even if the workflow wasn't assigned to me, if I have the right permissions. A super admin, for example, has a role rank of 255 and can edit anyone's request. After we create a new role, we can determine which of TAP's features are visible to that role. For example, we see that when we select the super admin role, every possible menu item is checked. The super admin can see every part of TAP. On the other hand, our new role has not yet been given any features. We can assign those now and determine that this role should be able to see the workflow dashboard and the Business Automation tab, but should not be able to see anything else. We can further limit roles by assigning different privileges at the administration level. We need to be careful here because not all permissions happen at the administration level. Some permissions are implemented at the level of a particular workflow. Sometimes these permissions overlap, and sometimes they do not. Let's jump right in. Individual workflow permissions are found in the Business Automation tab within an individual level and confer permissions to departments and roles. These permissions intersect with the permissions granted at the site level. The administration level assigns privileges to specific roles within TAP at the site level. The superadmin role, for example, is configured in the Administration tab. By clicking on the Application Permissions section, we can determine what different roles are able to do in TAP. There is also a difference in terms of the types of privileges each level can confer. Administration level privileges tend to operate on the site level, while workflow permissions operate on the level of the individual workflow. The catch, of course, is that the ability to access a workflow may depend on your more general TAP privileges. Therein lies the rub. Administration level privileges do not always and do not only rely upon access to specific workflows. For example, the grid data source delete item privilege is the permission to delete a grid data source. It should be clear that one's ability to delete a grid data source has nothing to do with the workflow, either generally or specifically. Any role with a privilege like the grid data source delete item privilege will be immediately able to wield such a power and delete as many grid data sources as he or she might wish. The other type of permission found in the administration section can be roughly categorized as a permission that sets the stage at a general level but does not have an immediate impact. Only when a general workflow permission found in the administration level and a corresponding permission is set at the individual workflow level will the general workflow permission have any effect. If we grant a general workflow permission in the Administration tab, such as Repository, All Records privilege, to a role, that role bearer will still not be able to see any workflow records until he or she has also been given access to view the record of a workflow at the level of that specific workflow. Similarly, in the Application Permissions section of the dashboard, we determine whether or not certain roles have Audit Trail Items privilege. This privilege is what allows for a given role to see a workflow's audit trail by clicking on the View History item in the Actions column. However, even if a role is granted this privilege, that role bearer will be unable to view the audit trail unless there have been audit trail permissions set up at the individual workflow level as well. Whether or not a user is ever able to see an audit trail is configured in Application Permissions, and whether a user is able to see the audit trail for a specific workflow is configured at the department level in the Workflow Permissions section. Individual workflow permissions are found within each workflow in a section labeled Permissions. These permissions operate on the level of the individual workflow. For example, when we give a department permission at the individual workflow level to show active workflows, we mean that if the roles within that department are able to see all records as defined in the application permissions, then they will be able to see this record as well. This is why we refer to these permissions as specific workflow permissions. There is further documentation linked to this page that can explain the nitty-gritty of each administration permission and workflow permission. Let's table that for now and move on. The Administration tab, as I mentioned before, is also where we set up our OAuth access with our Salesforce and e-signature keys. We will not discuss that in this training tutorial, but additional information on setting up these keys can be found in your TAP user manual. Finally, we will change the look and feel of our site by selecting the Theming section. From here, we can change the header and login page colors by setting different hex codes. I can also choose an image that will display on my TAP site, my company logo, or any picture of my choosing. I can also choose the same logo or a different image to be displayed at my login page. I can also change the CSS and HTML that underpin the site. I simply choose the CSS file that I think is the best. If you would like your menu or your site as a whole to look different than it does at this point, you can connect with our solutions team, and they will meet your needs. In summary, we have discussed new user management, roles and departments, administration and workflow permissions, and theming. This concludes the ThinkSmart tutorial on TAP administration and permissions. I hope you will join us again in another training tutorial.